Hey, how's it going? This is James P. White from 95.7 Cruise FM, The Locker Room, and welcome to the Jedi Jimmy podcast. This is Jedi Jimmy podcast, episode number 20, Obi-Wan Kenobi series, episodes 1 and 2. Holy wow! I am so excited about this. What a great show. What I'm going to be doing with this podcast is, because I'm going through episodes 1 and 2, how this works is I'm going to be doing a breakdown. I'll be explaining a lot of the characters, stuff like that. But also because this is a lightsaber, going to have a lot of lightsaber stuff in there. I'm going to be explaining the lightsabers, the style of the lightsaber, as well as the lightsaber combat. And the same as I did with Boba Fett, I will also be giving you my predictions for upcoming episodes. And also in future episodes, I will actually be pointing out mistakes that I made or predictions that didn't come true and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot to go through with this episode. I am so excited. Now, the first 5 minutes of the show was actually them playing clips from Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, as well as Revenge of the Sith, giving a backstory on Obi-Wan and Anakin's journey to Anakin turning to Darth Vader. Now, one thing that happened in this one that kind of happened in the Book of Boba Fett, when Grogu had a bit of a flashback of what happened to him, there was a clip of the Order 66 where we never saw before, where younglings were being taught and their master was killed, but some of them did escape. Now, this episode does take place about 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. So Luke Skywalker is now 10 years old, and so is Leia Organa. So they're all about 10 now. And we are introduced to the Inquisitors right at the very beginning. Now, I'm not sure if I explained to you who the Inquisitors are. They are basically Sith assassins. They are, they were either Jedi that turned during Order 66 and either were captured and tortured to become the part of the dark side, or they just volunteered because they're Force sensitive. Now, Inquisitors were trained by Darth Vader, but they are not Sith. They're Sith assassins, but they're not part of the Sith Order. Because remember, the rule of the rule of two, which is there's only a master and apprentice. No more, no less. And the reason they do that is because of one thing about the dark side is they're always pushing for more power. So what happened when there was a lot of Sith out there is they were killing each other off or plotting against each other to gain more power. Now, there still are only two Sith. There's still Darth Sidious, or the Emperor, and also Darth Vader, who used to be Anakin Skywalker. Now, in Obi-Wan's cave, he was trying to communicate with Qui-Gon Jinn, his former master, who is in the netherworld of the Force. Now, if you remember at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda said, I have some training for you. I could teach you how to communicate with your former master. But I believe he had not really communed with him very well. I think part of that is because Obi-Wan has kind of given up hope, with the fall of the Jedi and the Sith or the Empire taking over. There's not really much room for hope anymore. And one thing that I realized with Obi-Wan's predicament is there's a lot of parallels to what Luke was going through in The Last Jedi when he had given up on the Force after Kylo Ren killed his Jedi in the temple and became a Sith. Now we also, during this episode, we meet a Jedi. His name is Nari, and he meets up with Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan tells him to hide, to get rid of his lightsaber, to just forget about being a Jedi, to try to save him. But Obi-Wan refused to help him because he's trying to get away from that to protect Luke Skywalker, who he's watching on the planet. But later on in this episode, the Inquisitors do catch Nari and kill him and hang him up in town square on Tatooine. Now, one thing that about Nari, I believe he was one of the younglings that escaped from the temple during Order 66 that we saw at the beginning of the movie. Now, as I said, we go to now where Obi-Wan is keeping an eye on Luke, and he meets up with Owen Lars, who's now Uncle Owen, and Owen says, leave us alone. He doesn't want any influence by Obi-Wan because of what happened to his father. Now, Leia Organa, she's also 10, and so we go to Alderaan, and she has this little tiny droid that she calls Lola, and the little robot actually looks a lot like the little robots in that movie a number of years ago. It came out when I was a kid. Batteries not included. I just thought that was kind of a fun fact. Now Leia, she has a bit of an attitude. Like she's a funny little kid. She loves getting adventures, going into the woods, that kind of stuff. But she is kidnapped by some bounty hunters that were sent by Reva, one of the Inquisitors. And she's an evil person, Reva. But she was kidnapped, and one of the kidnappers was actually played by Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, the Inquisitors have been searching for Obi-Wan for over 10 years since the fall of the Jedi, because Anakin, or Darth Vader, wants him. He wants him alive so that he could kill him. Now, when they kidnapped Leia, Bail Organa from Alderaan, her father, goes to Tatooine and asks Obi-Wan for help because nobody else could do it, and so he goes to try to save Leia. Now, Obi-Wan, years ago, had buried his lightsaber in the middle of the desert. So when he decided to go try to help Leia, he had to go find it in the desert. Now, a lot of people are saying, like, how did he find it? It's the middle of the desert. There's no markings or anything like that. I believe the reason why he was able to find it is because the Jedi were kind of linked to the Kyber crystals. So the little crystals in the lightsaber that gave it the blade is connected to the Force. So I believe he was able to find it that way. That's why it was so easy. Now we go into episode 2. This takes place on the planet of Dayu, and we see a lot of familiar faces in this one. Tamura Morrison, he actually played a homeless clone trooper that, was retired. Remember, this is 10 years after the Clone War, and all the clones were actually basically retired by the Empire because they decided to go with stormtroopers, which are people that either volunteered or were conscripted. Now we meet up with Kamal Najani. He plays a con man that pretends to be a Jedi by using number of magnets and remotes to trick people into thinking that he has power of the Force. But he ends up actually being a bit of a good guy and helping Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end. Now, when it all works out at the end, Obi-Wan actually does save Leia. But in this episode, we are introduced to another female Inquisitor. I don't know who this one is, but we already have the Grand Inquisitor. We already have Reva, who is third sister, and we have the fifth brother. And now we were introduced to a new Inquisitor in this episode. It took a while for Obi-Wan to be able to get Leia's trust because she had never seen a Jedi before. She was taught that they, all had died, and there was a lot of skepticism. She did run away. He was able to prove that he was a Jedi, but during this time there was a lot of bounty hunters after them. Reva did put a bounty on his head. One of those bounty hunters is a robot that kind of looked like a bug-type alien. That was Forlom. Now, Forlom was actually one of the bounty hunters in Empire Strikes Back. So again, that's in about another 9 or 10 years. He was one of the bounty hunters that was hired by Darth Vader to try to find the Millennium Falcon, so Han and Leia, in the future. So what Reva did in this episode is the reason why they have the rule of two. She wanted to catch Obi-Wan Kenobi to get favor with Darth Vader, their master. But the Grand Inquisitor was in charge and he was getting in her way, so she killed him. So that's why there's the rule of two, because they are always trying to get more power. And that's what happened. And her ambition is the reason why she was able to betray him, because greed is a path to the dark side. Now, at the end of the episode, we do see a huge thing. I jumped out of my shorts. Was they showed Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader unmasked in a Bacta tank. And that was the last scene. That was so huge. One of the biggest things I've ever seen in any of these TV series. Now, I'm going to explain the lightsabers really quick. Now, the Inquisitors have a very unique style lightsaber. They're usually double-bladed, but the Grand Inquisitor, fifth brother, and the other female Inquisitor all had the similar style where it was a double-bladed, but it had a cover for the hilts, like a circle that went all the way around to guard your hands. But not only does it protect your hands, but it also, those lightsabers, the blades actually have the ability to spin around the perimeter of the circle, which makes it kind of like a circular saw kind of scenario, and that's really cool. Now, Reva's lightsaber is a little bit different. She does have... Okay, by the way, the other Inquisitors carry theirs on their back, whereas Reva's, it's a double-bladed as well, but it's only got a half circle on the hilt, and she carries it on her hip, and hers is really cool. Now, usually what I was planning on doing with this podcast is if there's any lightsaber combat, I was going to go through and explain the different styles that they use, because we all know Obi-Wan uses Form 3, but I'm figuring that the Inquisitors probably are going to be using between Form 3 and Form 5, just because that is what Anakin was very good at. Now, I have some predictions for upcoming episodes, one of which I have a feeling that we're going to see Black Chrysanthemum, who showed up in Boba Fett. I believe he's going to be in future episodes of Obi-Wan, because not only is he a bounty hunter, but in the comics, they actually fight. And so I'm hoping that happens. And now another prediction I do have is that there's definitely going to be a lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and the Inquisitors. Also, I know for a fact it better happen is there's going to be a fight between Obi-Wan and the Darth Vader. Now, my favorite quotes from the episodes are, in episode 1, the Jedi cannot help what they are. Their compassion leaves a trail. The Jedi code is like an itch, and he cannot help it. That's a quote from the Grand Inquisitor when he was searching for the Jedi on Tatooine, where there was 2 Jedi, and they found and killed the one. Episode 2, my favorite quote is actually from Leia, and it says, "You think the less you say, the less you give away. But really, it's the opposite that's true." I need to thank you so much for joining me for my podcast. I know this one is full of a lot of information. I hope that some of it helped. And I really look forward to episode 3, which is going to be next week. Now, I know it comes out on Wednesday, but I'm going to be doing my podcast on Saturday just to kind of keep consistent and give me a little bit of time to prepare. And as well as, if you do see anything that I missed or made a mistake in, please let me know. Send me a message, comment on my podcast, and I will point it out the next episode. Now, not only am I thanking you for joining me, but I do need to thank my sponsors. Of course, the Dean Blundell Network on deanblundell.com. As well, my buddy Army Chris, who helped me set up this whole scenario and get me going on this podcast. And I love this stuff. See you next week. May the Force be with you.